10 minutes later, my mom called back. Her voice was panicked. They're saying I committed fraud. My card isn't working. I'm at the checkout and it's declining. What did you do? I reported the accounts you opened in my name, I said. The bank is investigating. They froze everything tied to my social. How could you do this to me? Do you have any idea what you've done? I can't pay for the room. I can't get cash. You need to call them back and fix this right now. And for the first time in my entire life, instead of feeling like the bad guy, instead of feeling guilty, I felt something else entirely. I felt free. No, I said, my voice steady. I'm not fixing this. You did this. I'm just refusing to cover it up for you anymore. I didn't realize it yet, but that moment at the airport, that decision to tell the truth instead of protect a lie, was my real revenge. Not watching her panic. Not seeing the consequences land. The real revenge was what came next. Over the next months, I worked with a lawyer. I filed reports. I got my credit frozen. I watched accounts get disputed and fraud investigations begin. My mom faced real consequences. Probation. Mandatory counseling for gambling addiction. Restitution payments that would follow her for years. But the real victory, the part that mattered, I got my life back. I moved to Denver. I took a job at a hospital with mountains instead of neon lights. I signed a lease on an apartment entirely in my own name. And when my paycheck came in, the money just stayed mine. No automatic transfers. No guilt. Just mine. Listen. If you're sitting there listening to this and some part of it feels uncomfortably familiar, if you see yourself in my story, I need you to hear this clearly. You are allowed to ask for proof. You are allowed to see the statements. You are allowed to say no, even if they call you selfish. You are allowed to protect your credit, your savings, your future. That doesn't make you cold. It makes you careful. Family is not the people who share your DNA. Family is the people who don't turn you into collateral. Family is the people who don't use your love as a weapon. And here's what I want to ask you. Tell me in the comments. Have you dealt with something similar? Maybe not exactly like this, but close enough that it hit you in the chest? Have you ever been the one holding everyone else up while they built their lives on your back? Share your story. Because I can promise you this, you are not alone. Not even a little bit. And if you found any part of this helpful, if you found yourself in these words, please subscribe. Because there are more stories coming. Stories about standing your ground. Stories about reclaiming your life. Stories about what it means to finally put yourself first. You deserve that. You deserve a life that's actually yours. Thank you for listening. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. If you haven't liked the video yet, do it now, and tell me which city you're listening from in the comments. You have no idea how much that means to me. So there I was, standing in my own front room, feeling like the walls were closing in. My son, Nathan, with his head hung low. Sabrina, with a smirk that could cut glass. And me, with my heart splintering apart, piece by piece. I asked, where did all the money go? I know jewelry and spa trips don't cost that much. She sat down, crossed one leg over the other, and said, I had debts, okay? Real ones. From before we got married. What kind of debts? I asked, the pit in my stomach growing heavier. Credit cards, she said. Inspecting her nails like this was just another boring conversation. About $90,000 worth. I clutched the arm of my chair, my knuckles turning white. You spent $90,000 on credit cards? Nathan nodded silently. Mostly clothes and handbags, he said, eyes not meeting mine. I felt like I was sinking underwater, like I couldn't get enough air. And what about the rest? I asked. That's still over $500,000, Nathan. That's when Sabrina dropped the real bomb. I helped my brother buy a food truck, she said, like she was proud. And gave my mom a new car. And I invested in a friend's boutique business. My mouth went dry. How much did you invest? $280,000, she said. It hit me like a brick to the chest. You put nearly $300,000 into a business with no experience? A boutique. You've never run anything in your life. Oh, please, Sabrina laughed. It's going to make tons of money. But it hasn't yet, I said. Has it? She shrugged. Not everything works out right away. What would you do if someone took money that you helped them build their life with, and spent it all like this? I need to know. Drop it in the comments. Would you have exploded by now? I stood slowly. My tea sat cold on the table beside me, untouched. I worked for 35 years to own this home, I said. And now you want to move in here, with me, after blowing through more money than I've ever had in my lifetime? It would just be for a little while, Nathan repeated, his voice soft and tired. No, I said. Both of them looked up at me sharply. No. Nathan echoed. You can't stay here, I said, my voice steady, firmer than I'd ever felt in my life. You made your choices. You spent everything. You threw away your future. This house, this little quiet, simple house, it's all I have left. And you're not going to ruin it too. Nathan's face crumbled. He looked like a boy again, the same boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard and call them flowers. Sabrina. She finally dropped the act. Her eyes turned ice cold. You can't be serious, she snapped. We're family. I looked right at her. Exactly. Which is why I won't enable you anymore. To be continued in part 3. Next, you'll see how quickly things spiraled when I stood my ground, and what unthinkable things Sabrina did in front of the whole neighborhood. Like, share, and follow, because you need to hear what happened next. Before I go on, take a moment, like this video if you haven't yet, and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. And please, stay with me to the end. It's about to get intense. I stood there, shaking but firm, telling my son and his wife they could not move into my house. My home. My peace. And that word, no, must have sounded like a slap in their faces, because that's when the real storm began. You're throwing your own son out on the street? Sabrina said, her voice rising with every word. After everything he's done for you? What has he done for me lately? I said, and instantly hated how bitter I sounded. Because all I see is a man who let his wife burn through everything we helped them build. Nathan turned to the window like he couldn't stand to look at me. You always hated me, Sabrina snapped. From the moment you met me. I looked her in the eyes. I didn't hate you. I distrusted you. And I was right. That was the match that lit her fuse. You're just a bitter old woman in a rundown house with nothing but ugly furniture and dusty photo frames, she hissed. No wonder your own son doesn't love being here. The words stung. Deep. Like knives under my skin. But I didn't flinch. At least I didn't blow through a fortune trying to impress strangers. Sabrina's face twisted into something I can only describe as monstrous. You judgmental, jealous witch, she screamed. You're just mad because Nathan chose me over you. I should have walked away. I should have said nothing. But I didn't. I said, he chose wrong. She gasped. And then, with the front door wide open, the neighbors all out gardening, chatting, walking dogs, Sabrina raised her hand and slapped me across the face. The crack echoed like thunder through the street. I stumbled back, one hand flying to my cheek, not from pain but from the sheer shock. I heard a gasp. It was Mr. Park from across the street, standing by his roses, frozen. Mrs. Lopez next door dropped her watering can. Nathan just stood there, frozen, silent, his eyes wide but his mouth shut. Sabrina, I whispered. Did you just hit me? You deserved it, she spat. You're throwing your family into the street like we're garbage. You hit me, I said again, stunned. She crossed her arms, chin lifted like she was proud. I'd do it again. Imagine your child's partner slapping you, and your child doing nothing. Nothing. Would your heart break too? Tell me in the comments, because mine shattered. I turned to Nathan. Your wife just hit me in front of everyone. And you're going to say, what? He opened his mouth, closed it, rubbed his face. She's upset, he mumbled. She didn't mean to. My knees nearly buckled. Didn't mean to. She just assaulted me. Then Sabrina stepped closer, her voice now low and menacing. You can cry and play the victim all you want, Eleanor. But no one's going to feel sorry for a bitter, lonely woman who lives in the past. She pointed out the open door. You think these neighbors are your friends, she sneered. They're watching this train wreck, and you're the one who's going to come out looking crazy. And I realized right then, this wasn't just a tantrum. This was a calculated, toxic, dangerous person. A woman who knew exactly how to twist the story to make me look like the villain. To be continued in part 4. What I did next would change everything. For her, for Nathan, and for me. Follow, like, and don't miss part 4. You need to know how I finally took back my power. If you're still here, thank you. Please like the video if you haven't yet, and drop your city in the comments so I know how far this story has reached. It's not over yet, but something big is about to happen. I stood there on my porch, my face stinging from where Sabrina had slapped me, my neighbors frozen in shock, and my son, my only child, still saying nothing. Marcus, I said quietly, using his real name now, not the sweet nickname I'd always called him. Your wife just assaulted me in front of the entire neighborhood. Are you really going to let that happen without saying a word? He didn't even look at me. She's upset, he said again. You know how emotional she gets. Emotional? That wasn't emotion. That was rage. That was entitlement. That was a woman who thought she could destroy people and walk away untouched. Sabrina looked proud of herself. She turned to the street and yelled, "Did everyone see what kind of woman Eleanor James really is? Throwing out her own son. Slamming the door in the face of her own family." I saw people, my neighbors, people I'd shared barbecues and snow shoveling with, looking horrified. But I also saw something else. Sympathy. Understanding. Because they heard the slap too. And they saw the look on my face. I want you off my property, I said. You don't get to decide that, Sabrina spat. Oh, but I do. I pulled out my phone. My hand was trembling, but my voice didn't waver. I dialed 911 and said, "My name is Eleanor James. I live on Maplewood Lane. I need police assistance immediately. I've just been physically assaulted in front of multiple witnesses." Sabrina's smirk dropped. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice sharp and rising. "You're seriously calling the police over this?" "I'm not calling over this," I said. "I'm calling because you hit me. And because you think you can hit people and walk away." She grabbed Nathan's arm. "Tell her to hang up." "Nathan, say something." But he just stared at me, like he didn't know who I was anymore. The dispatcher asked if I was safe. I said yes, but I needed officers sent right away. When I hung up, Sabrina's face was white with panic. "You're going to have me arrested?" "I'm going to hold you accountable." And I swear, for the first time since I'd met her, she looked afraid. "Would you have made that call? Would you have pressed charges if it meant drawing a line between you and your child? Be honest in the comments. I need to hear what your heart would have done." 12 minutes later, the police arrived. 2 officers, one older man with kind eyes, and a younger woman with a calm, strong presence. They asked me what happened. I told them. Calmly. Directly. I pointed to my cheek. I didn't cry. They turned to Sabrina. "Did you strike Ms. James?" "She was being difficult," she snapped. "We were just trying to stay here. She's the one being unreasonable." The officer didn't blink. "That's not a legal justification for physical violence." "Do you want to press charges, ma'am?" the older officer asked me. I looked right at my son, hoping, praying, begging him to say something. To finally see her for who she was. To step in and protect his mother. He didn't move. "Yes," I said. "I want to press charges." Sabrina gasped. "You can't do this. I'm your daughter-in-law." "You're the woman who hit me," I said. And then they put her in handcuffs, right there in front of my rose bushes. She screamed, begged, threatened, and cursed. But it didn't matter anymore. I was done. I was so done. As they led her to the car, she turned and screamed at Nathan, "Are you really going to let this happen? Are you going to let your mother destroy us?" He just stood there. He looked more like a shadow than a man. The squad car pulled away. The neighbors went back inside. And the street was quiet again. Nathan turned to me. Did you really have to go that far? I didn't even hesitate. Yes, I said. Because you wouldn't. To be continued in part 5, the final chapter. Next, I'll tell you what I discovered about Sabrina that will haunt me forever, and what my son finally decided to do. But in the middle of part 5, I'll also ask something of you. Something personal. Because I know I'm not alone. Like and follow, part 5 is the most important one of all. If you're still here with me, thank you. Stay to the end. What happens now changed my life forever. The house was quiet after the police car left. Too quiet. My heart was beating fast, but my hands, steady. I had crossed a line inside myself. A line I never thought I'd cross as a mother. Nathan stood there, shoulders sagging, eyes hollow. We'll figure this out, he said weakly. But I knew he still didn't see. Days passed. Calls. Silence. Sleepless nights. Weeping into my pillow like a child, whispering, why? Then the papers came, the legal papers, and suddenly, everything moved like a storm. I met with a lawyer. I learned things about that house. About money. About responsibility. And slowly, I began to understand that love sometimes looks like letting consequences happen, even when it hurts like fire. Weeks later, Nathan asked to meet. He walked into the office looking older, thinner. My heart squeezed. "Oh, my baby. I want to know everything," he said. His voice cracked. So the lawyer showed him. Records. Receipts. Lies stacked on lies. The boutique that didn't exist. The food truck mess. The secret account. And then, the part that broke him, the affair. Nathan cried. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quiet, broken tears sliding down his cheeks. Ha ha ha, he choked once, but it wasn't laughter. It was disbelief, pain turning into something sharp. I gave up everything for someone who never loved me. I reached across the table and held his hand. This isn't the end of you, I whispered. We sat there for a long time. Silent. Breathing. Then he said, very softly, like a child asking permission, I'm filing for divorce. My heart didn't leap. It didn't celebrate. It just exhaled. Relief and sadness wrapped together. Time passed. Papers were signed. Hearings were scheduled. Sabrina fought, screamed, lied, and lost. And somewhere in the middle of those long, exhausting months, Nathan came home. Not to move in. Not to hide. But to sit across from me at the kitchen table and talk. To ask forgiveness. To rebuild. Right here, I want to pause and ask you something from my heart. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. Because truly, none of us should feel like we're drowning alone. Back to what happened. One evening, he showed up again. No papers. No drama. Just himself. He said, Mom, I'm paying you back. Every dollar. Every cent. I don't care how long it takes. I hugged him, and for the first time in years, it felt real. Safe. My son was back. Not the scared man who hid behind his wife, but the boy who loved me. We still argue sometimes. We still heal. Healing isn't pretty. It's messy. There were nights I still cried quietly at the kitchen sink. There were days I laughed suddenly like ha 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 when I realized I wasn't scared anymore. One day, months later, I stood in my backyard again, tomatoes in my hands, sun on my shoulders, and I realized something. I hadn't lost everything. I had lost illusions. But I had gained boundaries, strength, self-respect. And slowly, painfully, my son found his way back, too. If you've ever had to make a painful choice, a choice that hurt now but saved you later, tell me below. I'm listening. The story doesn't finish with fireworks. There's no perfect happy ending. But there is peace. And peace, my friend, Feels like finally breathing again after holding your breath for years. If you've read to the end, thank you. What would you have done in my place? Would you have said no earlier or later? Part of me wonders too. But I know this much. Sometimes love is gentle. And sometimes love says, enough. Stay with me, more stories are coming. You don't want to miss what happens next in my life. Because this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning.